cut off, please, with MP Tucker for 6 minutes.
Yes, we're going to just talk academia for a bit to start here, a little bit of the current landscape in the States, and then Canada. It would be interesting to hear our witnesses' take on it. In terms of just some of the costs associated that universities spend money on is the DEI programs. And we see American universities such as the U of M, University of Michigan, have spent over $250 million in the past few years, and 56% of that cost was salaries. And got me thinking, how expensive is this project in Canada? Does any of the two witnesses want to take a stab at what that might be? No, it would be probably into the millions, if not billions. And this is while we have a crisis where every university, every group that comes in here that represents students or professors or research is asking for more money. And we have dollars that the taxpayer has provided Ottawa to provide studies, such as and I'll open this up if any of you two that have comment, University of Waterloo for $37,524 from furries to sports fans. This is the study that was done at the University of Waterloo. Any comments on that spend?
Yeah, if I may, the thing is, it's not just the direct cost, large as it is, and universities, being creatures of the state, are hugely bureaucratic these days. It's the impact on education and morale. At our universities, pro-Israel speakers are chased away by thugs, whereas people are invited in to spew anti-Semitism. There was just a lounge open somewhere that's for non-whites only. This kind of thing is not just a monetary cost. It's hugely demoralizing. And there's another thing, because you talk, and the Bouchard report talks about this DEI and how we must have this and that perspective and so on. But Jonathan Kay once said, okay, who wants to be first up in the oral tradition-powered rocket? So it forces people to make claims about the nature of knowledge which they know are false. And that's deeply corrupting. And that would not happen in private universities. To privatize universities is not to destroy higher education, it's to reinvigorate it.
Thank you. And along that vein...
May I say something?
Yes, please.
May I? Thank you. Look, I think it's terribly easy to pick out one program that sounds as though it's incredibly fruity and start in on it. It's very easy to target something that, as Senator Proxmire did for many, many years in the United States, something that seems to be worthy of the Golden Fleece Award, as he called it. But to be honest, what you should be looking at is the whole statistics. You should be looking at the track records of research programs in various universities, and you should be looking at which ones of those seem to have led to profitable and useful things, not necessarily financially possible, but humanly possible, that have issued in results that have made human lives go better. That's the sort of statistical basis you need. Don't please wave your hands in the direction of something that comes to you in a catchy phrase and think necessarily that that's indicative of the whole thing. And with respect to DEI...
I'm just going to go on to the next question. Okay. I'd like to explore a little bit more of what Dr. Robson talked about on campus. We have heard testimony on the importance of diversity of viewpoints as opposed to conformity that critics say is currently pushing by universities. Could you elaborate on the benefits of viewpoints of diversity and the ways in which modern universities harm that? And that example that you highlighted is one of the areas that I believe is harming our society.
Well, my own story, and I've taught at 4 major North American universities, and I've also worked in 2 of Canada's major think tanks. But I taught at the University of Calgary my first year, and I went to see the chairman at the end of my year, and I said, I'd love to stay on. This is great. I think the students like me. I have good reviews and so on. And he said, oh, we wouldn't have hired you if we'd known you were conservative. And I said, that seemed a little bit strange. And he said, oh, no, we just don't like ideology. And I said, with respect, sir, we're sitting in your office under a 6-foot red square silk flag of Che Guevara. And he said, that's just decoration. But at the end, I also had a student tell me, I'm a graduating senior in history. I've been here 4 years. You're the first professor I ever heard criticize the Soviet Union. And that was in Calgary. And that was 30 years ago. This is not a healthy environment. This is not a place where students are being exposed to a variety of viewpoints and challenged. And, it's worse in the humanities than it is in science, but it's getting into the sciences too. And this is not
Just to cut you off, I got one last question that if we run out of time, please submit a brief for both the last question and this one to fully explain your answer. In terms of peer review, though, in your view, is it currently fitting the purpose that we have peer review in our studies?
Totally broken. It's PAL review. The reviewers aren't paid. They don't go and look at the data. They just sort of go, yeah, that sounds all right. And Retraction Watch publishes. You get this endless retraction of peer-reviewed papers. The system is busted through and through. And the idea that, it's got to be public because a private system would be corrupted. The public system is deeply corrupted.
Thank you very much for your testimony today.
Mr. Kitcher, you have time to chime in for a little bit if you'd like. Do you have an answer on that or no? Oh, you muted yourself. Maybe you could submit an answer in writing then so that we can move on. Thank you. Okay, we will now turn to MP Chen for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again to the witnesses and for coming back to today's meeting. I'll start off with Professor Kitcher. You spoke about the dangers of the privatization of research. Could you tell us a bit more? Do you have any examples in which privatization of research is tailoring to the needs of wealthy or to powerful corporations that does not necessarily support broad research for the greater public good?
It's all over parts of the pharmaceutical industry. You only need to look very broadly at the kinds of drugs that are made, the kinds of drugs that are marketed, the ways in which, for example, drugs that are addictive were pushed. I'm thinking of things like the Sackler family. There is a huge amount of stuff that doesn't get produced because it would do good, even though it would do good, because it turns out to be unprofitable. There's this is a terribly sad story. So I co-authored a study with a young student at Columbia early in the 21st century, where we actually took a hard look at the ways in which the needs of people around the world were being met by Big Pharma. It has gotten much better than that in the years since, but it's still got a lot wrong with it. Privatization is driven by profit motives, and people who can't pay don't tend to get the drugs they need, even when those drugs have already been developed.
There's been a lot of conversation around, pharmaceuticals and the insurance industry, given the recent events in the U.S. But with respect to the example you just gave, would you say that more public funding is needed to support research that is not created in the interest of powerful corporations and for-profit motives?
Yes, I would say that. In my view, this is terribly important. I must confess, Dr. Robson comes from a family of academics. I come from a family of poorer people, and I was a great beneficiary, and my mother before me was a great beneficiary of the fact that various medicines were universally available in Britain to people who couldn't pay. That is something which any serious ethical medical system should strive to replicate. And if the drug companies are making that impossible, then the drug companies should be regulated.
I'll turn over to Dr. Robson. You talked about